Thank you very much for joining us, Ray. I'm Vincent, Director of Journalism and Media Ethics at the Markkula Center for Applied Ethics at Santa Clara University. We're going to talk about your business and you as a leader on how you've been handling the pandemic, and also from the standpoint of reopening the economy as people start speaking about ramping up. Before we get to some of those aspects, I wanted to just, if you can give me a brief biography about yourself, who you are, where you're from, and also how you came to start this business. And then I'll get to my other questions.
Sure. Hi, Subbu. Thanks for having me today. I have been in financial services in my career for the first 10 years. And then the next 20, I was in high tech running technology companies, venture backed and whatnot. About 10 years ago, I thought, boy, high tech sure is demanding. I had operations in India, customers in Europe. It was 24/7. The technology cycles were so fast. I thought, you know what? For the rest of my career, maybe I'll look at low tech instead of high tech. I researched a number of businesses and I found great clips among a number of them. And as I got to know the company better and the business, I fell in love with it. And that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years.
So coming to the current crisis moment, just to give us a sense of the business itself, how many employees did your business have before the pandemic actually hit us? And what percentage of them had benefits? What percentage of them might have been temporary or contract and so on? Can you give us a sense of size and scale?
Yeah, sure. So we had 87 employees. And we laid off all of the hairstylists except for the managers. The managers have been retained on payroll so that we can keep in touch with the stylists, keep them engaged, and be ready to reopen, have them ready to reopen, communicate with them, and whatnot. Prior to the crisis kicking into gear, we had about 10 employees on our 401k where we match up to 3%. And then there was just a handful on our health benefits because they're so expensive and the Bay Area is so expensive to live. A lot of them just can't afford it. So we all do the best we can, the company contributing as well as the employees, but we're not quite there yet. So many of them are on benefit plans through spouses or other means.
And how has this impacted you and your family personally overall? And can you also say a little bit about how it's impacted your employees, both types of employees, those you've retained as managers and those you've had to lay off? Could you speak to all of those things?
Sure. Well, starting with the family, we have twin first years in college, in California colleges. They are both home and they are both taking their classes from home. Mostly it's fun having them around. The family plays cards after dinner and we've been doing fun projects. So everyone here is healthy and that's good news. For the managers who are on board, we have a weekly conference call and we text and communicate throughout the week, sharing updates of what's going on in the news, sharing recipes, sharing what we're all doing to stay active and engaged, exercising, and just sharing fun, COVID-related memes and content. The employees more broadly, in our company, nobody has contracted the virus. Nobody's direct family has contracted the virus. I think partly that's because we were very safe as soon as we started hearing about it in January, February. And some of it's just good luck, I'm sure. So anyway, everybody is healthy. Everybody is itching to get back to work. Everybody is bored. And we're all keeping in touch through GroupMe. We have 2 GroupMes that we've set up. One is for information, updates, things like that everybody should pay attention to. And then we have one that we set up just for fun because people started posting all sorts of fun videos and images and updates, and not everybody was up for that. So whoever wants to have fun can do that. We have contests to keep people engaged. In our industry, cleanliness is really important. Barbicide, who makes the disinfectant liquid for combs and whatnot, has a new certification. And so we've directed all those folks, if they want to go ahead and get that. It's another thing that they can do. So that's a little bit of what's going on and how they're doing.
So on the group conversations that you just said about, does that include the laid off employees as well, or is it primarily you and the managers?
No, so we have a private group meet chat for the managers, and then we have the two that I mentioned for everybody. It's not required of anyone. This is a service that we're making available for whoever would like to keep in touch, right? Because we're not paying these people, and so we can't require them to do work. So it's simply something available for them. Similarly, I do a video message every week or two. I try to make it fun as well as informative and educational. Those are all optional. We send those out by email, GroupMe, and text.
So when I hear this out, as you sort of plot your way through this time, how are you prioritizing the interests of various constituents at Great Clips? You've got employees, you've got family, your own role, and investments. You've got existing customers you've known, community, and so on. So across these different types of what we call stakeholders, is there a way you map through your actual priorities?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very clear. I've communicated it to my investors as well. So as it relates to the family's fine. My wife is here helping take care of them. I see everybody multiple times throughout the day. So I guess that's priority number one, but it's not where I spend a lot of my thoughtfulness, because it's just happening. In terms of the business, priority number one is very easy. It's the employees. It's the hairstylists. If they're not happy, if they're not healthy, there's no customers to serve, there's no sales to be made, there's nothing that will happen for the investors. It's also just my style and our company culture. So for example, we were forced to close our salons on March 16th due to the shelter-in-place order in Santa Clara. And then the next day in Santa Cruz. All of our 9 locations are now closed. The next day, I was communicating to all of our employees that it's critical that with 0 hours scheduled for them to work, that they apply for and get unemployment immediately. We didn't know how long this was going to last. We didn't know how it was going to play out. I didn't know whether I would keep them on as employees with 0 scheduled hours or if something else would happen. And so immediately, the most important thing to me was make sure that they have income. When the federal government came out with their $600 a week payment, that was even more important. And so we made sure everybody understood that, everyone pursued it, everyone got on unemployment so that they can get there. Making sure they feel safe and confident about coming back to work has involved me ordering and testing all sorts of different products like face shields, face masks, reusable, disposable, different types of disinfectants. And so the hairstylists are my number one priority, period. Now, once we've taken care of the hairstylists, we focus on the customers. When we first closed down, we immediately put up signs on the front retail doors. We updated our outbound voice message for all of our stores explaining what's going on and what's happening. Both, we indicated that we would have updates in both of those places, as well as Yelp, Facebook, and on our website. When customers call now, if someone doesn't answer the phone in the hair salons, the phones roll over to me. So if anyone stays on beyond that initial message of what's the status, what's going on, and they want to talk to someone, they can get through to me. And interestingly, I am now starting to use that for customer research to understand how they would feel about different decisions that we're looking at making for our reopen plans. And then
Can you give us an example of how a customer conversation might have gone with respect to reopening plans? I was going to get to your plans for ramping up, so this you sort of went into that. Can you give us
yeah,
a sense of what one might have gone?
yeah. Yes, I can. Just one last thing. So then there's investors in the community. The investors I take care of just through regular communications, giving them updates. In the community right now, we're just not that involved because we're not out there. But I'm on all sorts of email lists and keeping up to date on what's going on. I did have a meeting at one of our shopping centers with a number of other local retailers to hear what's going on for them, to share ideas and to support them and whatnot.
So how did that
Um,
meeting go? Before we get to the customer conversation example, since you mentioned about retailers,
yeah.
was there anything from a sense of shared responsibility or shared burden that emerged for you that you'd like to tell us about at this point?
This alone could be a long conversation. Let me see if I can boil it down. Most of these retailers are independents. There's the local Mexican restaurant, the shoe repair, the nail salon, the chiropractor, and a sandwich place. Uh, they're not making any sales. They don't have money to carry on and pay their bills like insurance or phone systems and whatnot. There's a lot of concern, some amount of fear that you could feel in the conversation. No one has paid their April rent and they don't see how to pay May rent. They're very concerned about the relationship with the landlord. What will the landlord do to us? As well as how's the landlord going to get by? And so there's a lot of discussion about how to communicate, whether to coordinate, and so on and so forth. So I felt like it was nice for me to be there. I think our company will be pretty safe through this thing. And I helped inject a lot of suggestions on how to proceed, and many of them are going to be taken. So I felt good about that. And then we're going to meet every 2 weeks to check in and see what's going on. But that whole area of landlords, insurance industry, banking that funds the landlords, and the impact on the retailer who has no sales is very complicated and really a big problem still.
Yeah, thank you for that note. I think that deserves some special attention. So coming to your customer research pivot example, as you were speaking to people on the phone, could you give us an example of one interaction that might be
I'd love to
interesting?
give you an example. I'd be happy to give you an example of one, which is pretty representative. And then there's another one that I'm just about to kick off. And if you have suggestions, maybe offline, we could talk about them. So customers call, they get the message, hey, we're closed due to the shelter in place. Our plan is to reopen as soon as the government is permitting and so forth. And then they can stay on and it will connect to me. And when that happens, I know somebody's got something on their mind beyond just hearing the update. So a recent one, the customer called and asked me if I could send his favorite hairstylist to his home for a haircut. Our haircuts at that location are $19, and he offered to pay $60 to have her come to his home. He would not get off the phone. He was just beside himself that he needed to have a haircut. He was safe. He trusts she would be safe. No one's going to get the virus. And he would not get off the phone, and he was insistent that $60 was fair and a good amount of money for her. So I explained and talked through with him the risks. Even if he is safe, she may or may not be. Even if we think they're both safe, they may or may not be because of asymptomatic carrying of the virus. I shared that we would love to serve him. We cannot wait to get back out there to serve him and others. That I would share the message with the stylist in question and let her make her own decision. But in the end, we hung up the phone on positive terms. I think he felt cared for, cared about. And I think it was a respectful conversation. And although he didn't get the answer he was hoping for, I hope after thinking more about it, he will realize that it was the best decision to make there. Now, the next customers that call in, as we prepare for our reopening and ramping up, we're trying to figure out a few things. And in particular, it's going to relate to our pricing. We are incurring all sorts of costs to just get to reopen. We need to purchase sneeze guards, massive volumes of disinfectant, disposable gloves, cloth reusable masks, disposable masks, and the list goes on. The way we're going to operate is going to be a lot less productive, the way the government is putting in place restrictions and requirements. And even without the government, we would do it for safety reasons. And so the number of customers we'll be able to serve and the amount of sales we'll be able to have is going to be much lower. And so the question we're struggling with is, during this difficult time, when a lot of people are out of work and they come back out to get their hair cut, we would like to make it as easy and available to them as possible and leave our prices just how they are. By the same token, if we don't figure out how to address some of these other issues in the business, we may not make it through the other side of this thing. And so we're looking at charging a coronavirus recovery fee of some sort, or just raising our price. The corporation does not want to do a fee. People don't like fees. They're annoying, and so forth. By the same token, it's an easy item to make temporary and to communicate and explain to people why we're doing it now. And you know what? For people who get really upset or just can't afford it, we could waive it. The alternative is to raise price, and that has a whole host of its own issues. And the increase we would need to make would not be insignificant.
Do you have leverage to raise price as a franchise owner, independent of other franchise owners of Great Clips and independent of the actual corporation? I'm just curious.
So yeah, Great Clips, all Great Clips are owned and operated by local franchisees who are independent small business people. And we have control over the price levels. We all have agreed that our retail price, to keep it simple and to have integrity, there's no, $18.99 or $12.95. Everything's just a straight zero price. But as long as I price it at 18 or 15 or 25, whatever it is, I can choose the price, and that's the law. It would otherwise be price fixing. And so we have to be very careful to make sure we do all make independent decisions, even across franchisees. I cannot talk to another franchisee about, well, I'm going to set this price, or I'm thinking about this price or that price.
Yeah, so you've essentially summarized two options you have. One is to do a coronavirus line item to the price. That's a temporary thing that allows you to address these costs, or to just raise the baseline price itself.
Or we could just leave it how it is. And in all of the cases, we are already also working with landlords on the price they charge us for our lease. Other vendors are reducing their prices to us. So we are working to get our pricing down, our costs down, and we are working with the government on various programs. There's something called the Payment Protection Program loan. There's EIDL loan. There's other programs available to help us cover our costs so we can keep our price where it is. And so that would be the third option, just to leave it how it is and get our costs down low enough so that we could operate.
So on the question of landlords, this is a sensitive matter because we're trying to reach them as well. I mean, how are your landlords working with you in this situation, given their vantage point as well? Like you yourself said earlier, they also are under pressure.
Yeah. So we paid full rent in March when we were closed for half the month. In April, 2 out of 9 landlords offered to waive the base rent as long as I pay the portion of occupancy cost, which is their operating expenses. And that's about 20%. I felt that was a fair deal, and so we're doing that for those 2 landlords. One of them has already agreed to do the same for May, and the other one is thinking through it. All of the other landlords have been reasonably understanding and have made different types of offers, essentially deferring the full amount of rent or requesting a partial payment now and deferring the rest. And so even though I'm making 0 revenues and still incurring costs, and those landlords are still generating revenues from groceries, restaurants that are open, other essential services like the pharmacy, they are requiring full rent from their tenants. And that's where there's kind of this standoff. So far, everybody's being respectful. Everybody's agreeing to work through it and recognizing we're in a crisis. But this is going to come to a head. And interestingly, it's going to come to a head either sooner or later. And this is what I mean by that. For tenants who aren't paying now, it's going to come to a head now, and they may start sending nasty emails or letters about requirements to pay. For those who are taking the deferral deals, when it comes 6 months from now or 9 months from now or whatever it is to start paying, they're going to be paying their regular rent plus required to pay this additional amount of rent. And I don't know how long it's going to take to recover, but my bet is it's going to take some time. And a lot of these tenants are just not going to be able to make those payments. So either they're going to hit a wall at that time, or the landlord's going to hit a wall at that time. And so if people don't address it up front now, in my opinion, I don't think there's going to be a good resolution. And we do have proposals on how to do that. As one example, my lenders have agreed to waive all payments other than like $100 a month, so they know I'm breathing and alive. And they're taking all of those loan payments and putting them at the end of our current loan term. Well, I think that's fair. I'll have revenues and be able to pay it at that time, and can't now. The landlord should be looking at deals like that, but they're in a bind, we're in a bind. Interestingly, for a business school case study, the landlords are also have a lot of debt. They're highly leveraged, many of them. And those banks that lent them that money have packaged up a number of those loans. So they, even if they wanted to, they could not ease the pain on those loans. So it's this waterfall and cascading effect through the economy.
Yeah, I was just going to bring up the cascading word. Everything that you said is a kind of cascaded interconnection effect going between the different suppliers of services and producers. Thank you for that. That was actually good to hear you outline it. So I wanted to get to a personal question and also an organizational question at the same time.
Sure.
I mean, how have you changed as a leader as a result of this experience? What do you sense in yourself? Because everybody says this is unprecedented. It's never happened before. The American economy has never faced this before. And how have you changed as a leader? And also, when you speak to that, could you also say a little bit about what strengths you have found in yourself that are actually helping now, and also what strengths did you find in your managers and your employees?
Yeah, thank you for that question. You know, I was on a hike the other day, 6 feet away from a very good friend of mine, both of us wearing masks. And he said, Ray, you know, I'm very curious to see how this situation is going to test your values and your values of your company. And Subbu, I have to tell you, I don't feel like I've changed at all. I bring a lot of passion and love to my work. The stylists know it, our managers know it. My priority on stylists, the way I'm executing against that has just changed. Prior to now, I've worked a lot to make sure they get good gratuities because it's a big part of their pay. Now I'm working on making sure they're getting their unemployment pay. I'm working on making sure they get paid the most they possibly can during this difficult time. I'm communicating to make sure they're feeling safe and healthy and respected. And it's the same thing. When I walk into our salons during the regular open hours, when a stylist finishes serving a customer, I will grab the broom and I'll sweep up after them. It's just a small way of me communicating that I care, I'm part of the team. I'm a big communicator. I think that sometimes I probably over communicate, and I do think that's important at this time. I'm sharing a lot of information. I'm trying to keep it lighthearted and fun. I'm providing principles for how we make decisions. So for example, I mentioned it's employees first versus any other constituency. I'm reminding everybody to first and foremost remain calm, be smart, and then make decisions based on data. Those are the three premises. So I always, when I run the business, I have clarity of decision-making criteria and purpose. I don't feel like I've changed much at all. And the key things are bringing your heart to your work, caring for the people that you work with and showing it to them. And then, being comfortable making hard decisions. It was hard to decide to lay off 80 people. But the reality was it wasn't really a layoff, and communicating that to people that this is the best way for me to make sure you get paid the most you can, and for all of us to make sure there's a company at the end of this to hire us and to give us jobs coming back. People understood it. Layoff is a scary word. And so we talked a lot about that.
All right, so that pretty much is what I had to ask you in this interview. I wanted to thank you very much, Ray, for your time. If there's anything else that comes up, we'll be in touch over email.